Everyone. Today we're looking at one of the strangest money stories out there. How did Jeffrey Epstein go from being a regular broke kid in Brooklyn, dad was just a city gardener, to having hundreds of millions, private islands, jets, and connections to billionaires? He didn't come from money. No college degree. No rich family handing him anything. So how did it happen? The 2026 DOJ files just added more pieces. Emails reaching out to Elon Musk about island parties, huge payments from people like Les Wexner and Leon Black, and questions about why major AIs like ChatGPT and Grok either glitch or avoid giving the full details when you ask. The powerful always try to shape what we see, but we're going to walk through it step by step. If you want to understand how extreme wealth really gets built at the top, stay with me. This gets interesting. Chapter 1. From Gardener's Son to Elite Infiltrator, 239 Seo. Let's go back to the start. January 20th, 1953. Coney Island, Brooklyn. Jeffrey Epstein is born into an ordinary working-class family. His father worked for New York City Parks as a gardener, mowing lawns, planting trees, basic city job. His mom was a school aide. No wealth, no connections, just regular life. As a kid, Jeffrey was bright. He skipped 2 grades and got into Lafayette High School early. Later, he earned scholarships to Cooper Union for math and physics, then transferred to NYU. It looked like a solid path, but he dropped out of both colleges. No degree at all. Then, in 1974, he's only 21, he somehow gets hired to teach math and physics at Dalton School. That's one of the most expensive elite private schools in New York City. The students are children of CEOs, politicians, billionaires. How does a 21-year-old with no college degree land that job? He lied about his qualifications, and no one checked. While he was there, he started building relationships with the wealthy parents. He was confident, charming, made people feel important. One of those parents was Ace Greenberg, the chairman of Bear Stearns. Epstein began tutoring Greenberg's son privately. By 1976, that connection paid off. He was hired as a junior assistant at Bear Stearns on Wall Street. From a gardener's son in Brooklyn to a trader at one of the biggest investment banks in just a few years. No family help, no elite education. It came down to being able to talk to people, act like he belonged, and open doors that should have stayed closed. Some early co-workers noted he was already talking about big connections he didn't actually have yet, pretending to be more plugged in than he was. That's a classic way people start climbing. So that's where it began. Charm, confidence, and bending the truth just enough to get in the room. Next, we'll see what happened when he actually got inside Wall Street, and the first time things almost fell apart. Stick around. Chapter 2. Bear Stearns' Rise and Shady Exit. 9 Sot 15 Sauce. Now we move to Epstein's first real taste of Wall Street, and the first time he almost got caught. In 1976, right after leaving Dalton School, Epstein starts at Bear Stearns as a junior assistant on the trading floor. He's not a big name, not even close. He's basically a low-level employee helping senior traders. But he moves up very quickly. Bear Stearns at that time was known for being aggressive and for hiring people who were hungry. The chairman, Alan Ace Greenberg, had a famous hiring philosophy. He looked for people who were poor, smart, and had a deep desire to get rich. Epstein fit that description perfectly. By 1980, just 4 years later, he becomes a limited partner at the firm. That's a huge jump for someone in their late 20s with no college degree. He's working in options trading, helping wealthy clients with tax strategies and big deals. He's already living a much flashier life than most people his age. But things start to go wrong behind the scenes. Bear Stearns begins investigating some of his personal trades and expenses. He had charged expensive jewelry for a girlfriend to the company account. He also misrepresented his education on internal documents, again saying he had degrees he didn't have. Then the bigger problem hits. In 1981, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, starts looking into possible insider trading and violations of Reg D rules, which govern private stock offerings. Bear Stearns suspends him temporarily and fines him $2,500, which was not a huge amount even back then. The SEC questions him, but no criminal charges are filed. No one at the firm ends up in serious trouble either. Epstein denies all wrongdoing. He says he's deeply offended by the accusations, but the pressure is too much. Instead of fighting to stay, he quits. He tells people he wants to go out on his own and work for himself. Looking back at old records and reports, this wasn't a random exit. It was a pattern starting to form. Get into a powerful place, learn how things really work, make money fast, build connections, and leave quickly when people start asking too many questions. He walked away from one of the most prestigious Wall Street firms without ever being formally charged. And he left with something far more valuable than a salary: knowledge of how the rich move money, who to know, and how to stay just inside the rules, or sometimes just outside them. That exit from Bear Stearns in 1981 was the real launch of his independent path. Next, we'll see how he turned those Wall Street lessons into much bigger money when he met the man who would become his biggest financial lifeline. Stay with me. Chapter 3: The Wexner Cash Cow, Biggest Payday. Now Epstein leaves Bear Stearns behind and steps into something much bigger, a relationship that would make him genuinely wealthy. In the early 1980s, he meets Leslie Wexner. Wexner is the founder and chairman of L Brands, the company behind Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, and other retail giants. At the time, Wexner is already a billionaire, one of the richest people in America. How they actually met isn't completely clear in public records. Some reports say it was through mutual social circles in New York or Ohio. Others suggest Epstein pitched himself as a financial advisor who could help wealthy people save on taxes and manage assets creatively. Whatever the start, Wexner quickly trusts him deeply. By the late 1980s, Epstein is managing large parts of Wexner's personal fortune. In 1991, Wexner even gives him power of attorney, legal authority to act on Wexner's behalf for financial decisions, sign checks, buy and sell property, borrow money, everything. That level of access is extremely rare, especially to someone who isn't family and has no formal credentials. Epstein sets up companies and trusts in Wexner's name, and in his own. He handles investments, real estate deals, and tax strategies. Over the years, he earns massive fees for this work. Public estimates and later court documents put the total fees Epstein received from Wexner-related entities at well over $200 million. Some investigations suggest the number could be higher when you include indirect benefits, but it goes further than fees. Epstein buys properties using Wexner's money or credit, then sometimes transfers them to himself at low or no cost. Examples include a Manhattan townhouse on East 71st Street that Wexner originally bought for around $13 million. Epstein ends up living there and later claims ownership. Similar patterns appear with other real estate and assets. In 2007, when Epstein's legal troubles first become public, Wexner cuts ties. He later says he was misled and that Epstein misappropriated funds. A 2020 statement from Wexner claimed Epstein stole vast sums from him, though exact figures were never detailed publicly. More recent looks at financial records from court cases and investigations show Epstein's companies received hundreds of millions in payments tied to Wexner over 2 decades. These weren't small consulting gigs, they were structured as ongoing management and advisory roles that funneled enormous amounts of money. Why would a self-made billionaire hand that much control to a former Wall Street trader with a questionable exit from Bear Stearns? Some point to Epstein's charm and his ability to make powerful people feel understood and protected. Others raise questions about leverage, whether Epstein had information or influence that made the relationship stick. Wexner has always denied any wrongdoing on his part and said he was deceived. Whatever the reason, this one connection became the single biggest source of Epstein's personal wealth. Without Wexner, the islands, the jets, the lifestyle, none of it likely happens at this scale. That's the turning point. From here, the money snowballs as more high-net-worth clients come in. Next, we'll look at those other billionaire relationships and how they added even more layers to his fortune. Stay tuned. Chapter 4: More Billionaire Clients. Black, Zuckerman, to Rothschild. With the Wexner relationship as his foundation, Epstein starts attracting other ultra-wealthy clients in the 1990s and 2000s. These aren't small consulting jobs. They involve massive fees, complex financial structures, and deep access to private wealth. One of the biggest is Leon Black, the founder of Apollo Global Management, one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Black pays Epstein tens of millions over the years for what's described as tax and estate planning advice. Public records and later investigations show payments totaling around $170 million between 2012 and 2017 alone. Some of these were structured as advisory fees for helping Black minimize taxes on huge gains, strategies involving trusts, offshore entities, and charitable donations. Black has said the payments were legitimate and that Epstein provided real value. But questions remain about why someone with Black's resources would rely so heavily on Epstein, especially after his 2008 legal issues became public. Another key name is Mortimer Zuckerman, the real estate developer and media owner who controlled publications like the New York Daily News and U.S. News and World Report. Zuckerman worked with Epstein on estate planning and financial structuring. Documents show discussions around fees in the 20 to 30 million range for certain deals, and Zuckerman shared detailed net worth statements worth billions during their relationship. Epstein also had ties to Ariane de Rothschild, who runs the Edmond de Rothschild Group, a major private banking and asset management firm. Reports indicate payments and advisory work totaling around $45 million in that circle. These clients didn't just pay Epstein directly, they funneled money through his companies. Firms like Financial Trust Company and Southern Trust Company, based in the U.S. Virgin Islands, handled much of the activity. Financial records reviewed in investigations show these entities generated roughly $800 million in revenue from 1999 to 2018, with Epstein personally receiving about $488 million in fees and another $360 million in dividends. A big part of the structure relied on tax advantages in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Epstein had relocated much of his operation. He qualified for special economic incentives that allowed extremely low effective tax rates, sometimes as low as 4% on hundreds of millions in income. This wasn't unique to Epstein. Many wealthy individuals and companies used similar setups. But the scale and the speed at which his entities grew stand out. These relationships followed a pattern. Epstein positioned himself as an expert in tax efficiency, privacy, and asset protection. He offered discretion, creativity, and connections that regular advisors couldn't match. In return, he earned outsized fees and built a web of influence among the ultra-rich. Not all of these ties were purely financial. Some involved introductions, social access, or help with personal matters. But from a money perspective, these billionaire clients turned Epstein from someone with a solid base, thanks to Wexner, into someone operating at the very top tier of private wealth management, without ever having a traditional license or firm. That network kept expanding until everything started to unravel publicly. Next, we'll look at one of the more controversial modern angles, the reported connections to figures like Elon Musk, and why so much of this information seems hard to pull out of today's AI systems. Stay with me. Chapter 5. The Musk-Epstein Connection. Island Invites and Tesla Advice. As Epstein's wealth and network grew in the 2000s and 2010s, some of his contacts started reaching into the tech world, including reported interactions with Elon Musk and people close to him. These ties have drawn attention because of how they contrast with Musk's public image and because parts of the story keep surfacing in documents and reports. Court-released files from the Epstein cases, including batches unsealed in recent years, contain emails and messages that mention Musk. One set from around 2012-2014 shows Epstein reaching out to Musk directly. The messages include invitations to events on Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, with phrasing like suggestions for the wildest party or asking about timing for a visit. Musk appears to have responded at times, expressing interest in certain social scenes or locations, though he has repeatedly stated he never visited the island and turned down any such invitations. There are also references to Epstein offering input on business matters. In one instance, he suggested ideas for Tesla's board composition, including naming Margaret Thatcher, who had already passed away years earlier. That detail alone has been called bizarre in later coverage. Epstein also had contact with Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, who thanked him in messages for various hookups or introductions. Musk has addressed these publicly multiple times. He has said any communication was limited, mostly one-sided from Epstein's side, and that he cut contact after finding Epstein's behavior off-putting. He has denied any deeper involvement, no flights on the so-called Lolita Express, and no business dealings. Still, the existence of these emails, some of which were part of larger document dumps in 2024 to 2026, keeps the topic alive in discussions. Beyond direct messages, there are reports of overlapping social circles. In 2015, for example, Musk attended a dinner where Epstein was also present, alongside other high-profile figures like Mark Zuckerberg. Photos and guest lists from that event have circulated. Epstein positioned himself as someone who could connect tech innovators with finance and influence networks, a role he played with several clients. Another layer that people point to is the question of information control. Epstein had a history of trying to shape media coverage and protect reputations through relationships. Some speculate, without hard proof, that similar influence could extend to modern tech platforms or AI training data, especially given Musk's ownership of X and involvement with AI companies like xAI. Queries about Epstein in some large language models sometimes produce incomplete, evasive, or oddly formatted responses, which fuels theories about selective filtering in training datasets. Whether that's intentional suppression, data gaps, or just model limitations is debated, but it's a pattern users have noticed when digging into sensitive elite connections. From a money perspective, these tech-adjacent ties didn't seem to generate the same massive advisory fees as the Wexner or Black relationships. Instead, they appear more about access, prestige, and expanding the web of influence. Epstein's playbook relied on being seen as a connector, someone who could bridge Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and global power circles. Even brief or superficial links to someone like Musk added to that aura. These modern connections highlight how far Epstein had come from his Brooklyn roots. He wasn't just managing money anymore. He was operating in spaces where ideas, technology, and power intersect at the highest levels. Next, we'll examine one of the most talked about aspects today: why so much detailed information about Epstein's dealings seems difficult or inconsistent when pulled from current AI systems, and what that might say about how information flows in the digital age. Stay with me. Chapter 6. AI Blackout and Censorship Proof. One of the most striking things people notice today when researching Epstein is how inconsistent or limited the information can be when coming from modern AI systems. If you ask ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, or similar models detailed questions about Epstein's financial dealings, specific client names, or certain email contents from the released files, the responses often become vague, incomplete, or they pivot to general statements about not speculating on unverified claims. Sometimes the model will say it lacks access to certain details, even when those details are in publicly available court documents or major news articles from 2024-2026. Users have run side-by-side tests. The same question asked to Google search returns direct links to articles from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, or The Guardian that discuss payments, emails, or connections in depth. But when pasted into an AI chat, the model frequently dodges, summarizes minimally, or refuses to engage with the more controversial angles. This pattern has led to widespread discussion online about possible blackouts or filtering in AI training data. Theories range from deliberate safety alignments that make models overly cautious on topics involving living high-profile individuals, ongoing legal matters, or anything that could be seen as defamatory. Gaps or redactions introduced during data curation by companies that want to avoid lawsuits or regulatory scrutiny. Influence from powerful figures who have stakes in those AI companies. For example, connections between Epstein's past network and current tech leaders. While no public evidence has surfaced showing direct orders to suppress Epstein-specific information, the inconsistency is noticeable enough that people test it regularly and share screenshots. For instance, asking for a summary of the 2026 document releases often yields a high-level overview that skips names like Leon Black or specific payment figures. Queries about the Musk-related emails sometimes produce responses that emphasize Musk's denials while glossing over the content of the messages themselves. Attempts to get models to analyze or quote from certain unsealed filings can trigger disclaimers like, I cannot verify private communications, even when those communications are now part of the public record. On the flip side, some argue this is just how large language models work. They are trained to be neutral, avoid spreading unproven claims, and prioritize advertiser-friendly or legally safe outputs. Epstein's case involves many living people, active defamation risks, and a history of misinformation, so caution makes sense from a product perspective. Still, the contrast remains. Traditional search engines surface the raw articles and court PDFs quickly, while conversational AIs often act as a filter layer that softens or omits details. Whether that filtering is intentional design, corporate policy, or something more coordinated is unknown and debated. What's clear is that this dynamic makes it harder for the average person to get the full, unvarnished picture from AI tools alone. You often have to cross-reference with direct sources, news archives, court dockets, or independent reporting to piece together the complete financial and network story. This information control angle ties back to Epstein's own history. He reportedly tried to influence media coverage, shape narratives, and protect reputations through relationships. The idea that similar dynamics could play out in the digital era through data curation or model behavior is what keeps people talking. Next, we'll look at the physical and legal structures he used to protect and grow that wealth. The islands, shell companies, trusts, and layered risk management that kept so much of it out of reach. Stay with me. Chapter 7. Islands, Shells, and Risk Layers. Epstein didn't just earn money. He built structures to protect it, move it, and keep it out of reach. This part of his story shows how the ultra-wealthy use legal and geographic tools to layer their assets and minimize exposure. The most visible example is Little St. James, the private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands that Epstein bought in 1998 for about $7.95 million. He later purchased the neighboring Great St. James in 2016. These islands weren't simple vacation homes. They became central to his financial and operational setup. Much of his business activity shifted to the U.S. Virgin Islands after he relocated there in the late 1990s. He established companies like Financial Trust Company and Southern Trust Company on St. Thomas, taking advantage of special economic development incentives offered by the territory. These programs allowed qualifying businesses extremely low effective tax rates, often in the single digits, on large amounts of income. Records show his entities reported hundreds of millions in revenue while paying minimal taxes under these arrangements. The islands also served as a physical and symbolic layer of privacy. Remote location, restricted access, private staff, all made it harder for outsiders to observe or document what was happening. From a wealth protection standpoint, this setup acted like a firewall, separate the day-to-day operations and personal life from mainland scrutiny. Beyond the islands, Epstein relied heavily on shell companies, trusts, and layered corporate structures. He created dozens of entities, often with generic or obscure names, registered in places like the U.S. Virgin Islands, Delaware, New York, and sometimes offshore jurisdictions. These companies held real estate, investments, aircraft, and other assets. Money flowed through them in complex patterns. One entity might loan to another, which then paid advisory fees to Epstein's main companies, creating paper trails that were difficult to follow. Trusts played a big role too. He set up multiple irrevocable trusts, some naming family members or close associates as beneficiaries, others structured to hold property or cash with Epstein retaining significant control. These trusts helped shield assets from creditors, lawsuits, or tax authorities while allowing him to continue using or directing them. A key principle here was compartmentalization, the same idea used in secure systems or intelligence operations. By spreading assets across many entities in different jurisdictions, no single point of failure existed. If one company or trust faced legal pressure, the rest remained insulated. Epstein also used debt strategically. Properties and companies were often financed with loans from his own entities or from banks, creating leverage and additional tax deductions. When needed, he could shift ownership or forgive loans internally to move value around without triggering obvious taxable events. This wasn't unique to Epstein. Many high-net-worth individuals and family offices use similar tools: offshore entities, trusts in favorable jurisdictions, layered holding companies, and tax-optimized locations. What stood out was the scale relative to his visible sources of income early on, and how aggressively he applied these methods starting from his mid-30s. The combination of physical isolation, islands, legal separation, shells and trusts, and jurisdictional advantages created what amounted to a private financial fortress. It allowed him to accumulate and preserve wealth at a level far beyond what a traditional advisor or trader could achieve. All of this structure served one main purpose: risk management. Reduce visibility, limit legal exposure, protect against claims, and keep control in his hands. Next, we'll look at another critical piece: how he tried to control the public narrative around his activities and why that mattered for sustaining his wealth and influence. Stay with me. Chapter 8: Media and Narrative Control. Epstein didn't rely only on financial structures or private islands to protect his wealth and position. He also worked actively to shape how the public and the media saw him. Controlling the story was a key part of keeping everything running smoothly for as long as it did. From the 1990s onward, Epstein cultivated relationships with powerful figures in journalism and publishing. He positioned himself as a generous donor, intellectual, and connector, someone worth knowing rather than investigating. He attended high-profile events, hosted dinners, and made contributions to causes that aligned with influential people in media. One documented example involves Mortimer Zuckerman, who owned the New York Daily News and other outlets. Emails and messages from the released files show Epstein reaching out to Zuckerman during periods when negative stories about him were emerging. In some cases, he asked for coverage to be adjusted, toned down, or delayed. Zuckerman has said he never altered editorial decisions based on Epstein's requests, but the existence of these communications shows Epstein at least tried to influence what appeared in print. Similar patterns appear in other interactions. Epstein was known to contact reporters, editors, and executives when stories about his activities started to surface. He would sometimes offer context, provide alternative explanations, or remind contacts of their shared social or professional ties. The goal wasn't always to kill a story outright. Often it was to soften language, shift focus, or create doubt about sources. This approach extended beyond traditional media. Epstein invested in or advised on projects that could help shape public perception indirectly. Think tanks, academic donations, or cultural events where he could appear as a philanthropist. These efforts built a public-facing image of respectability that contrasted with the private allegations. Why did narrative control matter so much for his wealth? Reputation is currency in elite circles. A damaged public image could scare off clients, trigger investigations, or make banks and partners pull back. Positive or neutral coverage buys time. It delays scrutiny, keeps money flowing, and maintains access to new opportunities. Silence or deflection protects assets. If stories stay small or get buried, legal and financial exposure remains limited. Epstein understood this dynamic early. After his 2008 plea deal in Florida, he worked hard to rehabilitate his image, funding science initiatives, hosting events with prominent scientists and intellectuals, and staying visible in respectable settings. For years it worked. Major outlets ran profiles that focused more on his wealth and connections than on the serious allegations. The digital age added complexity. Epstein died in 2019, but the release of documents in waves, especially 2023-2026, brought renewed attention. When fresh details emerge, the same playbook echoes in modern platforms: coordinated pushback on social media, selective quoting, emphasis on denials from powerful associates, and sometimes outright avoidance in algorithmic recommendations or AI summaries. Whether that's a continuation of old influence tactics or just the natural caution of platforms dealing with high-risk topics is unclear. What's consistent is the principle: whoever controls the narrative controls the damage, and, by extension, preserves the ability to keep generating and protecting wealth. Epstein mastered this long before most people thought about optics or perception management at this level. It wasn't just about hiding facts. It was about framing them, delaying them, or redirecting attention so the money machine could keep running. Next, we'll explore the psychological side, the dark leverage, charm, and access tactics that made these networks possible and kept people tied to him. Stay with me. Chapter 9. The Dark Psychology and Leverage. At the heart of Epstein's rise was more than just financial deals or legal structures. It was a calculated use of psychology and leverage to build and maintain his position among the elite. He wasn't just networking. He was manipulating human behavior, using charm, secrets, and subtle pressure to create dependencies and extract value. Epstein's charm was his entry point. He presented himself as brilliant, generous, and connected, a self-taught genius who could solve problems for the powerful. This wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate persona. He donated to universities and science programs, like millions to Harvard for psychology and evolutionary studies, to embed himself in academic circles and gain credibility. Once inside, he used these ties to influence directions and ally with faculty for personal gain. But charm alone doesn't explain the loyalty or the massive fees. Leverage came into play. The dark side, where information became currency. Released emails from 2025-2026 show Epstein attempting to use personal details for influence. For instance, in communications with Bill Gates, he hinted at leveraging sensitive information to push for favors or introductions. Similar patterns appear in emails with Elon Musk, where social invitations mask deeper access seeking. In elite networks, Epstein acted as a hub, connecting politicians, tech leaders, scientists, and financiers. Network analysis from the files models this as a graph where he held high centrality, enabling collusion in tight subgroups. He speculated on personal vulnerabilities, like alleged drug use in discussions with lawyers about clients such as Leon Black, to sway outcomes in fee disputes or legal strategies. The psychology extended to his darker operations. Documents describe an MLM-like scheme where recruiters, often young women, were incentivized to bring in others, turning participation into a perceived opportunity rather than exploitation. No overt coercion, just economic and social framing that made people complicit. This mirrored how he handled elites: offer value, tax advice, connections, then imply mutual protection or shared secrets to bind them. Surveillance and intimidation were tools too. Emails reveal Epstein coordinating with high-powered lawyers to track accusers, use secret recordings, and push for arrests framed as extortion defenses. These tactics weren't just defensive. They created fear and control, ensuring silence or cooperation. Even online, he manipulated narratives, hiring SEO experts and hackers post-2008 conviction to bury negative search results with planted philanthropy stories. This digital leverage kept his image polished, allowing wealth building to continue. The broader psychology here is one of elite exceptionalism. As analyses note, this power circle was accustomed to ignoring suffering. From financial crises they enabled to social harms they overlooked. Redeeming someone like Epstein fit the pattern. Disregard the powerless to protect the network. It wasn't always about explicit blackmail. Often it was implied mutual benefit, where looking away preserved everyone's status. This mix of charm, information, asymmetry, and psychologica